Welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests, for a very important downtown Rotary meeting and program. Thank you for joining us. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I'll now invite Rotarian Tony Knorr, who will facilitate today's invocation.
Thank you, President Jason. Will you bow your heads? In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, you share that you have a plan for each of us, plans to prosper us and not harm us, plans to give us hope and a future. Allow us to be ever mindful of this promise. While our faith has certainly been tested over the last year, thank you for providing a way for us to both survive and thrive through economic development in our homes and communities. You ask us to love our neighbors as ourselves, and we are grateful to live in a generous community where we invest in opportunity and possibility to create a stronger future. We ask that you be with our community leaders who are once again joining forces to collaborate for the greater good. As we hear the Forward Sioux Falls story, let us not take for granted your role in bringing us together to help lift each other up. Thank you for the investment of time, talents, and resources to move our community and region forward. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, Tony. We have a few items of Rotary business. Next week, Monday, March 8th, from 11:30 to 4:30, we will be having a watch party for the Summit Tournament at the Blue Rock Bar and Grill. So please RSVP for that when you have an opportunity at your earliest convenience. And I did skip over what has become customary. We do ask to greet our guests. So everybody who is a guest of the Downtown Rotary Club, if I could have you stand and be recognized quickly, please. Wow. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you. What is also fun about Rotary meetings recently is the number of new members that we are inducting, and today is no different. I would like to now welcome up Kurt Laudenbach, who will introduce a new member, Michael Winkelmann.
Thank you, President Jason. And I'd just like to first thank those of you that reminded me that today's my wife's birthday. Thank you. Michael Winkelmann. Michael grew up in North Dakota, and he attended Trinity Minot State University, where he majored in paramedicine, a far cry from what he does today. He moved to Sioux Falls in 2001. Michael's the partner and principal at Patient X since 2007. I got to know Michael when it was actually 724 Factory, now Patient X. It's a healthcare marketing firm that focuses on improving the patient experience. So if that's not enough, he also serves as the Vice President of Marketing at National Medical Billing Services in Chesterfield, Missouri. So Mike spends about half of his time in Sioux Falls and half of his time in St. Louis, which is a National Medical Billing Services, a medical billing company that focuses on ASCs, whatever an ASC is. I guess you'll tell everybody what that is in a minute. But he's a current board member for Kids Chance in Sioux Falls and a volunteer at a variety of different nonprofits in the St. Louis area that he's calling his second home now. Michael enjoys speaking. He's an author. He's a photographer, does a variety of healthcare associations throughout the country. He's married to Kimberly, and they are the parents of 5 children ranging from ages 9 to 17. A quick personal story, Michael and I actually know each other and met about 10 years ago. We were doing some work on the interior of our church and compared notes and found out that he found out I was from Ohio and his mother is from Ohio, same year of high school, and went to one of the schools that was in our league, in our sports conference. So little connection there that Michael and I got to know each other through. So let's welcome Michael Winkelmann to Downtown Rotary.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to be a part of the Rotary. As Kurt mentioned, I've been with Patient X for about the last 13 years. We do specialize in healthcare marketing that really ranges anywhere from what Kurt referred to as an ASC, which is an ambulatory surgery center, to larger hospital facilities. The majority of our clients are actually nationwide. We do have clients in New York to California. So that does add to the travel schedule. So for me, being an entrepreneur here in Sioux Falls, it's really given me a lot of insights to our community and the people of our community, and I've never been more proud to be a part of a community. Sioux Falls, for me, I came to Sioux Falls in 2001. Like Kurt said, coming from Minot, North Dakota, the Minot city. And I can give you lots of reasons. So I had to make a big decision, and I decided I want to go somewhere warmer. So I decided to move to Sioux Falls. There was other opportunities here as well for us. But in 2007, I decided to start my own business. And with the help of other entrepreneurs and business leaders in our community, I was able to do that. And Kurt, being a big influencer and mentor to me, helped me get started and really get my business started and moving in the right direction. So now we went from one client to, we have about 52 clients now across the country. And then, as he mentioned, I also am the VP of marketing for National Medical Billing, which is based right outside of St. Louis. It is the largest billing company for ambulatory surgery centers in the country. And we actually just got acquired by a PE firm, so we're going through those challenges right now too, but it did give us another $5.3 billion to be able to work with and to be able to grow with. So I'm super excited about those opportunities, but I do have to divide my time between here and Sioux Falls. And I am involved with a lot of different nonprofits in St. Louis. And I'm like, why am I not involved with more things here? I used to be really involved with a lot of different community organizations. So talked to Kurt, and he invited me to the Rotary, and I was hooked after I heard the mission that you guys have. And I'm excited to get started and can't wait for the next steps. So thank you guys.
So right before the meeting started, I went up to Mike and Kurt, and we were just talking through a little bit of choreography on how we do this. And Mike was a little caught off guard that he had to speak. And he was worried that he wouldn't have anything to say. Well, you have enough going on. You have plenty of things to say. So Michael, here on behalf of Downtown Rotary, some information there for.
All right, thank you.
Well, now for the main event. I would like to now turn the program over to Dave Rosenboom, who will facilitate today's exciting program. Thank you.
Angie, I think I have my eyes closed for that picture. If we could do that again. Well, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's a pleasure to be here along with my fellow campaign co-chairs, Paul Hanson and Dave Fleechek. It's great to have the opportunity just to bring you up to speed with what's going on at Forward Sioux Falls, and to share some information about that tremendous program in our community. Certainly recognize that there's probably a wide range of understanding about what Forward Sioux Falls is and what it does. And so today we want to talk a bit about its history, about the transformational impact that Forward Sioux Falls has had on our community. We're going to talk about the next 5-year program that will soon begin, and some of those key initiatives that will be funding through the campaign that we're currently underway with. So one of the expressions that I often use when talking about Forward Sioux Falls is that what we all enjoy about Sioux Falls didn't happen by accident. But rather, the leaders of the day back in 1987, so now 34 years ago, had a vision. And they knew that they had a sense for what our region could become. And the steps that they took back in 1987 have charted our course that we've been on. And I would say that the key thing to remember is, again, not by accident, but rather it was deliberate, it was purposeful, and it was bold. Very few places in the country had an economic development program as robust as what Forward Sioux Falls would become. And though we certainly can't take full credit for all the things that have been good things going on in our community, it is very hard to imagine what this place would be if it were not for the program we know as Forward Sioux Falls. So at its core, Forward Sioux Falls is an economic development program, but we've also implemented really important initiatives that have helped diversify our economy, that have helped grow the population base in our community, and have really worked hard to increase our workforce and recruiting companies to our area. And if I look back at the late 1980s, you'd say Sioux Falls was already a fine city. But it really took a bold vision to unlock the potential that we have as a community and to take our area from a regional hub to an area that has certainly garnered national prominence. We've certainly done a lot during the past 3 decades. We'll share a little bit about that today. But the exciting thing is there's much more work to be done. And we'll also unveil those key initiatives that will keep moving our community forward. So with that, we've prepared a presentation that we want to share with you. If I can figure out how to move this forward, there we go. So I mentioned, and I'm going to spend some time just kind of setting the stage for what Forward Sioux Falls is. So an economic development partnership, it is a joint venture between the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce and the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. And I'm just going to pause here. Our mayor is not present with us, but just to give a bit of credit for an effort that he led to provide a visual identity for Sioux Falls was one of the things that he established as a priority early on. And here you can just see how that visual identity is rooted in the Chamber, in the Development Foundation, and also in the Forward Sioux Falls logos. And it's really a nice way of pulling us all together. Give you just a moment to absorb this slide. This is a timeline of the 7 prior Forward Sioux Falls campaigns and programs. Again, you see that it started in 1987. Our current 5-year program runs through March 31 of this year, so we're already in the last month of a 5-year program. And our 8th 5-year program will commence on April 1, and that will carry forward through March of 2026. If you read the fine print in here, you would add it all up together, you'd recognize that a total of $53 million has been raised since the inception of Forward Sioux Falls in 1987, and that has funded the various initiatives that have made Sioux Falls the special place that we enjoy. If you also look back over this timeline, you would find out that there are periods when we would establish the priorities for a 5-year program, and that we would be in a campaign during a period of what I would call economic prosperity in our community. And there'd be plenty of examples of times of economic prosperity. But you'll also notice that there's a couple of periods of time when we were doing a campaign where it would be facing economic headwinds. And the most recent of those would have been coming out of the Great Recession back in 2010, 2011. And I think the thing that has always struck me is that whether we are in times of prosperity, in which case the natural human reaction would be, well, are you sure we really need to do this again? Things are going well. Or during a period of economic headwinds, when you'd say, you know, we are challenged with reducing our expenses as a company, as a community, every which way we can, it's time that we just pause. We can't afford that right now. The reality, the truth of the matter is, during periods of economic expansion or economic contraction, the business community and our government leaders always find a way to fund and increase our funding for Forward Sioux Falls. I think it's a real tribute on both ends of the spectrum. So the governance for Forward Sioux Falls is, again, an economic development program. We have no employees. It is a joint venture between the Chamber and the Development Foundation. And so the executive committee of the Chamber and the executive committee of the Development Foundation, a total of 10 members of the Joint Venture Management Committee, are composed of those 2 executive committees. And then we have, in addition, 5 at-large members as well in terms of governance. Our current chair of the Joint Venture Management Committee is Chris Ekstrom with the First National Bank in Sioux Falls. This slide, I think, does an excellent job of just showing how Sioux Falls is different than most places around the country. Forward Sioux Falls is a public-private partnership. And the company that we've engaged to help us with each of the past 7 campaigns, and the one we're currently in, our 8th, is a company called NCDS, National Community Development Services. And they've been alongside our partner every step along the way. When we did the last campaign 5 years ago, we asked NCDS, what's a fair mix, or what do you guys experience around the country in terms of the breakdown between public and private sector support? So the data from 106 communities that NCDS had worked with most recently showed that the national average, 39% of the economic development funding came from the private sector, while 61% came from the public sector. National average among 106 communities. Look at, on the right-hand side, what our experience has been in Sioux Falls. Here, we have 21% of the funding for the program that comes from the public sector, and a whopping 79% that comes from the private sector. So what do we know about South Dakota? We're a low-tax state. We don't look to government to provide more than basic services. And that's also true in economic development. And the reason the private sector supports Forward Sioux Falls is that we have not taxed ourselves to provide money to government to help with economic development. And yes, there's a very important role, and again, they play 20% of that role. That's primarily the City of Sioux Falls and the Regional Airport Authority. But the private sector really steps up and invests in our economy and in our community. This has made Sioux Falls distinctive in economic development around the country. And as NCDS would tell us, they refer to us as the gold standard for economic development programs. So I mentioned earlier, we've invested $53 million collectively over the past 34 years. And I think it would be fair to ask the question, well, has it done any good? Do we have anything to show for it? I think we can show a lot in the next 2 slides. Sioux Falls was incorporated back in 1856. And by the time 1987 rolled around, when we began this program, Sioux Falls collectively at that point in time had 67,000 jobs in our MSA. In the 32 years since that time, we've grown it to about 160,000 jobs. And just notice the change in trajectory in terms of job growth. So not only is the magnitude of the job growth impressive, but I would argue that the really important piece of this has been the diversification of our economy. For those of you like me, I moved to Sioux Falls in 1989, but back in the 1980s, you would have said that ag processing with Smithfield Foods, they were the dominant employer in our community and a really important sector in our economy. But you think about what's happened in terms of financial services, in terms of healthcare, in terms of retail, the expansion and the diversification has really helped strengthen and prevented us from, it's helped make us a bit more recession-proof. So I moved to Sioux Falls in 1989, I shared, about the same time Forward Sioux Falls began. And the number one challenge that we've experienced in Sioux Falls during that period of time is low unemployment. Now, low unemployment, great for the citizenry. Plentiful number of jobs for our citizenry. But a real challenge if you're a business. And so one of the things that we always need to remind ourselves of is that while job growth has been impressive, look at what's happened to our population growth. Whoops. Exactly the same slope and same level of growth. 130 years it took us to get to 125,000 people. It's only taken us 32 years to well more than double that. Nearly 270,000 people in our MSA. talked about the vision of our founding members of Forward Sioux Falls, and one of the things that they knew was possible in terms of our potential was just lifting up the profile of our community. And these are just a few of the accolades that Sioux Falls gets. We were recognized as the #1 best small place for business and careers by Forbes magazine, a whopping 12 of the last 20 years. So we've been #1 12 of 20 years. A really important recognition is that we were named in 2019, I believe it was, as the #1 city in the United States for young professionals. We invested heavily through Forward Sioux Falls into our young professional network through the chamber back in 2009 and 10, and it's paid great dividends. We've become, again, just a wonderful community for our young professionals. I think just as important as we recognize the need for a diversified economy is that we invested back in 2005 in the South Dakota Business and Technology Center. And that really was an impetus to embrace the entrepreneurial community in Sioux Falls. And it's amazing how it's exploded. In fact, last year we were recognized as the #10 best city in the country for entrepreneurs. And again, you look at the company we keep both on the young professional side and on the entrepreneurial community. It's been fantastic. And soon after I moved here in 1992, Sioux Falls was recognized by, I think, at Forbes magazine as the #1 place in America to live. Keeping in mind that was 5 years into the Forward Sioux Falls effort. And consistently, we are rated in the top 10 of places to live in the country, almost any measurement. But I think it's expanded well beyond just an economic development program. I think Forward Sioux Falls has helped provide our community with this can-do attitude. I just listed 3 examples up here. Again, coming off the Great Recession, back with when we decided to replace our civic arena with what became known as the Premier Center, with a 58% vote on the heels of the Great Recession, the largest public project of its kind at that time. And then just a couple of years ago, our Sioux Falls School District, with the expanding student population, went through a massive $190 million bond issue. Again, it passed on the first time with an 85% vote. And I challenge you to find any community in the country that passes a bond issue by an 85% margin. And then the Sioux Empire United Way has been recognized as one of there's about 1,400 United Ways across the country. We've been #2 per capita giving for a long, long time. And again, it's just another example of people helping people and a great community spirit here. So switch gears a little bit, just talk about the current state of Sioux Falls. This is just one measurement of our economic health and vitality right now. Our construction values in 2020 ended up at an all-time record high. You can see that we've had a tremendous amount of growth from a construction value standpoint. And just an example again of the strength of our local economy. This is a slide that shows our unemployment, and generally speaking, Sioux Falls has been about half of the unemployment level of the national average. We're actually about a third of the unemployment level right now. But this 2010, the one at 4.8%, that was on the heels again of the Great Recession. But otherwise, we've hovered at that 2.5% to 3% range for as long as I can remember. And that continues to be a persistent challenge. And good news is our population growth has kept pace and provided people to fill those jobs. Here's a statistic that I don't think gets a lot doesn't get shared often, but I just think it's an amazing statistic. Nationally, this is the participation rate in the labor force. If you're between the ages of 18 and 65, nationally, 63.6% in the workforce. In Sioux Falls, 73.7%. So the people that live in Sioux Falls have a strong work ethic, and and it's just amazing the difference between the national average and what we experience in Sioux Falls. That presents some challenges too with childcare and other things, but again, a great work ethic that our business community sure appreciates. This slide just talks about the increasing diversity in our community. So this is a reality that we are addressing through Forward Sioux Falls. We've got some specific initiatives targeted right at this. And what we recognize is that the workforce of tomorrow is going to look different than the workforce of yesterday. And here you see the fact that about 2% a year we shift in terms of non-white to white. When I moved here in '89, 95% white, 5% non-white. And now it's about 60-40, and again, continues to change. And that's wonderful for our community, but it just means that we need to bridge that gap when it comes to being employers in our community and find ways to effectively engage that demographic. So I'm going to talk just a little bit more about some of the parts and initiatives under Forward Sioux Falls program for the next 5 years that will be carrying forward. And then Dave and Paul talk a little bit about some new initiatives and then a little bit about the campaign that we're undergoing. So the strategic workforce action agenda, so workforce attraction, retention, and development is one of our 5 pillars that we'll be focusing resources in. I think the important thing to take away here is we developed a really good plan for Sioux Falls back in 2015. Greg Carmen with Midwest Railcar and Rob Oliver co-chaired a community-wide effort to identify 11 areas where we felt we could move the needle in terms of workforce development. It's one thing to just whine about it. It's another thing to actually take action. And in true Sioux Falls fashion, we identified those areas that we could make a difference. And we've set about an action plan to get the job done. Lots of success stories, but there's more work to do here. And I just want to say one area that we invest in is that the Chamber and Development Foundation team up together to do the siouxfalls.com website, which is a great portal for talent. So people looking to move to Sioux Falls, they can learn all about our community in one spot. And the same thing for businesses. You can refer potential employees that you're recruiting to one spot, learn everything about what it's like to live, work, and play here in Sioux Falls. We talked about job growth, and the number one opportunity to grow jobs in our community comes from our existing businesses. Adding 1, 3, 5, 7, 10 employees at a time. And Forward Sioux Falls funds Mike Gray's position at the Development Foundation, and Mike is responsible for working with our existing businesses to identify growth opportunities, removing barriers, and those types of things. And again, that position is funded through Forward Sioux Falls. I talked about the diversification of our economy, and so not only do we call on existing businesses, but it's also important that we keep an eye on emerging industries and those that we have an opportunity to continue to diversify our economy with. And so we have a multi-pronged approach to attracting new businesses and new industries to Sioux Falls, and really work well with the local development community, local brokers, as well as those on the national scene to attract. And again, some great examples of that. 5 years ago, we had the vision to develop Foundation Park, and just have been a tremendous success story. The Development Foundation took the initiative and the bold vision to purchase 820 acres. I believe there was about 7 separate landowners to pull that strategically important site together. And the reason it's strategically important, it's located at the intersection of I-90 and 29. It also has Class 1 rail coming right through the middle of it. And then it's really well equipped from a utility standpoint. And so the state, the Development Foundation, the city, Forward Sioux Falls, the Chamber and the Development Foundation all partnered together to make that vision a reality. And we just had some great success stories. Of course, Windchill was the first business that purchased land out there and built what is now, I think, a 325,000 square foot logistics facility in terms of freezer space. But we've had existing businesses expand out there. Companies like Nordica, Dakota Carriers, Tessiers is under construction. And then we've had just some really significant wins with the Amazon announcement and then the CJ Foods announcement that just came recently. And we could do a whole program on those by themselves. But again, if we didn't have the vision for Foundation Park, we just wouldn't have been in a position to take advantage of those opportunities. So Foundation Park will continue to invest with this new program in the marketing of that park. And that covers the industrial base of our community. Whereas the Usd Discovery District, another example of a wonderful public-private partnership that really focuses on innovation and research-based companies, and really excited what the future holds. We have a new executive director out there, Dr. Mark Brown, and really excited about some of the opportunities that are on the horizon for businesses to locate in that knowledge-based park. One other thing that Forward Sioux Falls funds is the advocacy efforts within our chamber. And so the positions that we've hired to do that work, to interact and represent business at all levels of government, whether it's local, city, state, and federal, business advocacy is so critically important. 2020 reminded us how important it is to have a business-friendly climate and how great South Dakota is to do business, but it's important that we don't take that for granted and that we continue to invest in these resources. And while I don't have time to talk about these in great detail, we'll continue to invest with strategic partnerships, organizations like Sioux Empire Housing, the Young Professionals Network, ZEAL, which is the South Dakota Business and Technology Center, renamed under ZEAL, Center for Entrepreneurship, and then also Sioux Falls Thrive, which is our Cradle to Career initiative. Again, we can't do all of the work. In many cases, we'll partner with organizations to carry on in terms of accomplishing those initiatives. So we're going to transition now. I'm going to invite Dave Fleechek. Dave is the president and CEO of Avera McKinnon Hospital and Health System. And Dave is going to talk a little bit about the new initiatives that will be part of this current 5-year program.
Thanks, Dave.
You bet.
Which is the button? Bottom. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks to Dave Rosenboom. Obviously, he has a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge and a lot of information on Forward Sioux Falls. So he's been a good mentor. So thank you, Dave. There's some staff people over here too, Mike, Tom, and Jeff. Thank you. Really, Paul and I just have to show up, and you have it all ready for us. So we want to thank you as well. So yeah, we are here about Forward Sioux Falls Campaign, and I am the co-chair with my friend over here, Paul Hanson. Paul and I were professional colleagues, work well together. I would say during the pandemic, we probably were talking every day. It was important for both of us to make sure that we were taking care of the community. And so it could have been around testing, PPE in the early days, and then in the middle of it, it was about bed capacity. And now I would tell you it's about vaccines. So you get us a vaccine, we'll get it in an arm. We're pretty good in this state of getting it in the arm. And I would tell you, please, everyone take the vaccine. It's safe. That's our public service announcement, I guess, today, is make sure you do that. But when I think Dave went into Paul's office and said Fleechek's in, and he came into my office and said Hanson's in, I said, okay, we'll do this. But really, Paul and I are up to it. We work well together. This is for the benefit of the community. We compete aggressively in healthcare, but when it comes to this community, we want to see it thrive and prosper and be successful. I don't think all communities could do that, though. I don't think you could get 2 health system executives in the same room. Tom would tell you that as he goes around nationally. But for us, this is about making Sioux Falls a better place, and being an economic engine. Forward Sioux Falls is that. So I think we both believe as rising tide lifts all boats. So that's kind of where we're at. We want to make sure that happens as we go forward. Paul and I are very committed to making sure this campaign is successful and that we meet our goal. Forward Sioux Falls, as employers here, they come together and we have common issues and programs that we want to implement. Instead of having 500 different employers trying to solve workforce, why not have a central place where we can have a workforce solution that businesses can go to and then try to help solve their workforce? So that's really what we're trying to talk about. A lot of seeds are planted. This is more than a 5-year campaign. Obviously, the Foundation Park is going to be a 10, 15-year campaign. I mean, it's amazing that how successful that's been. So as we look at this, we're going to make sure that it's not just about the current 5 years, it's about what's the next 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years, I think is really important as we develop this campaign. I see Forward Sioux Falls as this economic catalyst for the community. So we come together, public and private, investing to the benefit of our community. And so Dave talked a little bit about the past campaign. I am going to talk about what we're working on, some of the programs that this campaign is going to fulfill. The first one is housing. Obviously, if we hire workers, they need to have affordable housing. And so we're creating a fund with a partnership of the City of Sioux Falls, Sioux Empire Housing Partnerships, and HUD to create a fund to allow people to get access to affordable housing. I would say, as even an employer in town now, that is a tough issue in this town is to have affordable housing. I even have physicians I've hired that are struggling to find housing in the market. So it's a very real issue that we need to deal with. The second one is workforce, career connections. I think all of us would say we could use more and more workforce, but we just can't find them. And so we're looking at a care connection here where you have a central place to go as an employer. And let's say you're a trade, you want electricians. This person or this area would actually go and help you get high school students to maybe mentor for the summer so that they can move on postgraduate high school into a trade. Same here, I might have a need for people to mentor in behavioral health for behavioral health techs. After they leave high school, they could actually come then into the workforce. But instead of 500 employers contacting the city, that could do it for us going forward. The next one is REACH. We want to provide and support the REACH program. I can tell you right now at Vera McKinnon at 3 o'clock, when the housekeepers end their shift, we provide an hour of English to them. If they can't go into a room and not feel comfortable saying hello and hi, how will they be productive here long term? So I think the REACH program's great. The next one is the Cyber Park. This really is a seed. We are planting a seed here for the future. We will partner with Dakota State University, local tech companies, and the City of Sioux Falls to provide seed funding to create a visionary cyber and IT park. I can tell you in our business, cybersecurity, they're coming after us every day. Our CIO would say, it's not when, it's not if, it's when they will then get into our EMR. So we are concerned about that. Getting these high jobs, have them train here, have them stay here would be the goal. Then we're going to create an innovation center of excellence within the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber that'll provide an opportunity for the public and private sectors to collaborate and deliver innovative programs focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Something that we think is important, as Dave pointed out on the slide of our elementary schools. Obviously, we have to figure this out going forward. Then finally, we want to provide some funding for the future of Sioux Falls, a strategic plan. And this would be a broad strategic plan, not just with the city, but how can we get more people involved in how we're going to continue to keep this city prosperous and moving forward. So those are the 6 initiatives that we're really looking forward to invest in. I think every one of us can relate to those issues. And so I think that's something that is worth the investment. Now I'd like to ask my friend Paul Hanson, President of Sanford Health, Sioux Falls Region, to say a few words. Paul.
Good afternoon. Am I on? All right, great. You know, as Dave mentioned earlier, and this is our second attempt at doing a public presentation like this. The first time I failed miserably. I was supposed to push a button and I forgot to push the button about halfway through the presentation. I realized I was not moving the slides forward. So I've got backup today, right? All right, great. That's how we work at Sanford, backup. There we go. So I'm gonna put this down and give it to actually so I don't destroy anything as I go forward here. So this is good. I wish you were there. It was incredibly embarrassing. As Dave said, it is unique. It is unique when you have 2 competitors, especially at the level that we compete. You know, not only here locally, but within the region and within a tri-state area with our presence here. But as Dave said again, you put those differences aside for what's best for moving forward and what's best for Sioux Falls. Both of us, love this community and would do anything for this community. And so when Dave came in with his handcuffs and said, "You're going to do this," we really had no choice. But it's a good cause. It's a good cause. It's a great cause, and frankly, one that Dave, you lived here your entire life, right? And I'm new. I've only been here for 7.5 years to the state of South Dakota, 17 of the last 20, and I can't think of going anywhere else. I mean, you have opportunities within your professions, but when you look at what you have here, who you work with, who you live with, and I'm looking at the audience as well too. This is a very special place to be, and you want to make those investments. And so it was an easy yes to say, I want to help. I'd also like to say that, we are incredibly fortunate to have Dave Rosenboom work alongside us for this campaign. You can see his working knowledge, his respect that he has for you, the respect that we have for him. It is, it's incredible to have a leader like this, take the lead and champion this as we move forward, with this initiative. And also he mentioned the mayor. Mayor Tenhaken has been everywhere, and I look at, a man who comes into this particular office, not necessarily a job that always says thank you, but I mean, short of, I think we said this last time, short of the locusts, he's pretty much had everything else hitting him in his office. And I swear to God, if the locusts show up this spring, I'm blaming Dave Fleechek. So anyway, within the current program, we've set aside a $15 million cash goal. And we're going to be we're going to be asking, requesting in-kind pledges to augment that various initiative as well too. So as of today, as you'll see this, many of you who've been in here have pledged, to this campaign. And as of February 23rd, we passed the $10 million mark. And I think that deserves a round of applause for us. In typical Sioux Falls fashion, and with Dave as our leader, it was a lot of high fives when we crossed that, but we got a lot of work to do, so let's get moving. So we're doing that, and with that, we look at who can help us. So historically, Forward Sioux Falls, you were right on top of it. Thank you so much. I'm hurrying. Yeah, thanks. Historically, Forward Sioux Falls campaigns have had the most talented, respected individuals serve on the cabinet, and this year is no exception. We've assembled a great team, and one that is more than double than the previous campaigns have seen. And I think what the effort was and the design behind this was to create more bandwidth and more expertise, and really to provide that succession planning as we move forward and to see who the next leaders are that'll head this campaign for us in the future. It's not just the next 5 years, as Dave said. We're looking at that 15 to 20 years down the road. Within the cabinet, we've also asked individuals to serve as division co-chairs. And those responsibilities include recruiting individuals to assist in the campaign, providing direction with prospects, such as appropriate ask amounts, correct contact information, identifying of door openers and organizations that should be asked to pledge but are not currently listed on the prospect list. Division co-chairs have also had a critical role in keeping the cabinet focused. And this is vital as we broaden the prospect base reach to more organizations. However, it is also important to remember that regardless of division designation, and in true Sioux Falls fashion, we work together as one. So we're going to be actively campaigning through June. So if you know anyone who'd like to join the campaign as a door opener, please reach out to any of us at forwardsiouxfalls.com. And at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Dave Rosenboom for some closing thoughts. Thank you.
As you came in today, hopefully you had an opportunity to receive a couple of items. Number one, a campaign brochure, which provides a lot more detail. And I think specifically in that campaign brochure, what I want to highlight is the fact that we hold ourselves to very tangible goals. So yes, we raise a lot of money, we invest a lot of money into these initiatives, but we also set really important benchmarks to measure that progress towards those and hold ourselves accountable through the Joint Venture Management Committee to do that. And so I just really encourage you to spend some time and familiarize yourself with that brochure. Beyond that, we provided you with a book. It was about a year and a half ago, I want to say. Tony Bohr and I were talking. It was a Saturday morning. I was up in Madison. I was sitting in a parking lot of a store, and I get a call from Tony Bohr. And you usually, if you're like me, you take a call from Tony Bohr anytime you get one. And Tony and I were talking about a topic, and then he, out of the blue, said, "Hey, have you guys ever talked about doing a book on the history of Forward Sioux Falls?" And the truth of the matter is, it had crossed my mind. It's just I hadn't done anything about it. But Tony provided the impetus to tell the Forward Sioux Falls story. And so we engaged Evan Nolte, Mike Lynch. You were hugely important to that. We also selected Throne Publishing, Jeremy Brown, should know that like the back of my hand, to help us write the story, and Dirk Lammers as well. And we provided you with a complimentary copy of that book. I think you'll enjoy reading it. It tells a lot of the great stories of each of the campaign or each of the programs during that period of time. And I just really encourage you to, it's an easy read. It's something that I think it would be informative. But we didn't just write it as a history book. We also wrote it as a way to inspire the next generation of leaders in our community. And the last chapter of the book is dedicated to that very thing, is engaging that next generation. And I just want to read you how we put it. To the numerous business leaders reading this book who have played a part in Forward Sioux Falls' success, thank you. You have put your community ahead of yourself and your business to help your city achieve greatness. And if you look around you, you'll find a younger version of yourself who can do the same. Maybe that person looks like you, and maybe they don't. But you will recognize them for their passion, their drive, and their commitment to our community. Identify that up-and-coming leader to mentor and invite them to participate in the process. And I think about what the mayor started with Sioux 52 and what Rotary has adopted as our core program, and that is to be a mentor. And we just view this current Forward Sioux Falls campaign as a wonderful opportunity for us to engage that next generation of business leaders, to have them come alongside, to learn, and to carry that torch just a little bit forward during their career. And so I hope you read that book with both in mind, the history of Forward Sioux Falls, the fact that what we enjoy here didn't happen by accident, but more importantly, just to inspire other leaders to carry the torch forward. So with that, we'll wrap up, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little information. For those of you in the room who have been active in Forward Sioux Falls, thank you for your commitment and the difference you've made in our community. And at this moment, maybe have a little bit of time for some questions. We need to wrap up by 1, so maybe have a chance for several questions.
Congratulations on the great start on this. That's very exciting to see that. Really not surprising, but tremendous start.
Yeah.
Question related to tourism. You had that on one of the slides, but there's nothing in the 6 initiatives identified. Is all of the 15 million committed for the next 5 years? Room in there for some other things?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say, generally speaking, the rule of thumb with Forward Sioux Falls is that we design the program elements, set our goals, and then we test those with our investors. And then we all agree on what these priorities are. It might be to address a challenge, or it might be to take advantage of an opportunity, or all the above. And so generally speaking, we have budgeted out the program. But what you're talking about really fits underneath the quality of life initiatives. And although we don't highlight it, there are a number of opportunities for us to work to expand tourism in our community. And it's just really important. In fact, let me just say that I think it was 10 years ago, one of the elements of the Forward Sioux Falls program was to provide funding, but also community support for Good State Park, which was the first state park in the last 40 years. So we've got, sometimes, it makes the cut, sometimes it doesn't, but just depends on what those initiatives are. Other questions? Comments? All right, Paul and Dave, we have a time for you guys to do a little song and dance routine. And
Not to put my head down, so
And I was told not to push any green buttons.
that's right. That's correct. You got that right.
let me add this. One of the things that sets Sioux Falls apart is that, and it's represented on the stage here, as a community, we put our chips in the table together. Imagine if Paul had his set of priorities, and Dave had his set of priorities, and I have my set of priorities. And we have enough friends in the community that we could probably get a few people to agree with us, but we'd be going 3 different directions. And the reality is, if we go in 3 different directions, we would dilute the impact we could have. And the magic that Forward Sioux Falls has provided our community is to say, let's put our chips in the table in the center, and let's hold ourselves accountable, set some bold initiatives, but we're better off working together. And again, I just can't thank Dave Fleechek and Paul Hanson and their organizations for supporting those 2 as co-chairs. I think it's just symbolic of the good things that we have going on here in Sioux Falls. Thank you. The other thing that I frame a reference that I think is important is that a lot of communities feel like it's a zero-sum game. If we have winners, that must mean we have losers. And I think the thing, again, that sets Sioux Falls apart is that we say, if we put our chips in the middle, let's make the pie bigger. And if the pie is bigger, there's room for all of us to share in it. We can all be successful. And so I think Sioux Falls has really taken the mentality of, let's just continue to expand our economy. One of the challenges inevitably that we face is that there's this really uncomfortable tension about not having enough people, employees, to do the job. But if we take our foot off the gas in terms of expanding and diversifying our economy, we'll wake up 10 or 15 years down the road and we'll wish we had. And so we always have that little bit of uncomfortable tension, and that's okay. It's a healthy sign. So with that, Jason, I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you wrap up.
Dave, and Paul, thank you very much for the example and the thorough explanation of what Forward Sioux Falls is. And I can tell you, in a world where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's nothing uncertain about Sioux Falls, and there's nothing uncertain about the success that Forward Sioux Falls has had over the years. So there's no safer investment in my mind. Fellow Rotarians and guests, let's join in giving these 3 gentlemen one more round of applause for their efforts. Thank you. Next week, Rotary's Summit League Watch Party at the Blue Rock. We will not be having our regular meeting that day. Instead, we will be meeting at the Blue Rock at 11:30 to 4:30. So please join and RSVP when you can. March 15th will be the next time we reconvene. We'll be meeting at the Holiday Inn again, where the Sioux Falls Teacher of the Year will be our program. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.